Live with CDP, a weekly sports and entertainment podcast live on YouTube, Facebook Live, Twitter, and on audio via Apple Podcast, Google Podcast, Spotify, and Anchor FM. Now here's your host, Chris Palme.
Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to Live with CDP Sports Talk, Season 4, Episode 44, Episode 209 in total today. Live with CDP Sports Talk is brought to you by Barry Cullen Chevrolet Dealership, 905 Woodlawn Road West in the Guelph Auto Mall. Check out barrycullen.com for their newest selection of new and pre-owned GM vehicles, or give them a call at 519-824 0210, and you guys can also now pre-order the old electric Silverados as well. Guys, I'm looking forward to my guest today. He is the longtime public address announcer for the National Lacrosse League's Buffalo Bandits, Chris Swenson, and I look really forward to talking to him today about being the Bandits public address announcer for the last 30 years, minus 1 year for the COVID, and talk a little lacrosse. Hi, Chris. How you doing?
I'm doing all right, Chris. How you doing?
I'm okay. I picked up a bit of a bug on Saturday, but at least we're doing this virtually. If this was in person, I might have probably passed on it today, just let you know, but I'm going to get through this.
I think that's going around. I think the whole there's some kind of sinus and all sorts of different things happening. So you're not the only one.
Yeah, I might go back to wearing masks in public again when I'm around a lot of people again. I think I might start doing that.
Yeah, that's a good idea. You might get some looks though. Who knows?
That's true. That's true too. So I was gonna say I'm really looking forward to talking to your career with the Buffalo Bandits and how that I got into the lacrosse league this year thanks to Pat Gregor from CoolBet and TSN and John I think is it
Gertler.
Yeah,
Gertz. Yeah, great guy.
Yeah, he came on my show maybe, I don't know, 9 months ago, and he invited me down to a Bandits game this year, and I saw the Bandits play the Rock in Buffalo, and I saw the Rock play San Diego in Hamilton, and I'm hooked on the sport now. I'm definitely a new fan of the National Lacrosse League.
Yeah, it's a ton of fun. And as you mentioned, kind of at the top of the show, this is coming in, I guess, 31st season, just because COVID kind of ripped off a year here, for us. And I know the Lacrosse League started off as the Mill. I kind of joined the Bandits when it was the Mill, and then it became the NLL maybe, 4 years or so later. I would tell you that I've done a lot of sports as a PA guy, in my time here in Buffalo. So I've done the Buffalo Sabres. I did the Destroyers, which was a football team. I did some summer lacrosse leagues and some different things. And though I loved all of that, I always tell people that, the NLL is one sport that I would certainly pay to go and watch. Not that I don't pay today to go see the Sabres, but I think it's definitely a different breed from a pro sport versus some of the other things that you see, especially hockey, right? I mean, it's kind of very similar to hockey in the arena, but at the end of the day, it's just, especially in Buffalo, the whole game day presentation team, outside of myself, does a great job of just keeping the energy up and keeping the crowd entertained. And it's just a ton of fun.
And that's what I like about it. Like I said, I went to a game in Hamilton this year and then in Buffalo, and I was very impressed with the in-game presentation. And it's just a fun sport. I look at it as a combination of hockey and a little bit of basketball as well.
Yeah, for sure. You're dead on there. Tons of fun, lots of goals. I think that, for some of the purists, when you think about lacrosse, I think that they might be taken back a little bit when they look at the NLL, because the box lacrosse is a lot different than, let's say, field lacrosse. But for me, I think quite honestly, and I hope I don't turn off some fans here, but I find the outdoor game a bit more boring than I do the indoor, because I like the fact that it's fast paced, it's close. I guess I'm born and raised here, in Buffalo, so I'm used to the hockey and the close confines, and I like the fact that there's a lot of scoring. I like the fact that there's hits. I like the fact that there's great goaltending, good defense. and you get that instant gratification from a crowd standpoint.
I was gonna say, and how disappointing was it to lose that NLL finals to the Colorado Mammoths? Because you figured having a home field advantage for Game 3 would have made a difference, but Colorado, everyone's got to give them credit too. They played really well as well.
Yeah, I mean, they got hot at the right time, which you didn't have what I would say. They had a good season, but they weren't an outstanding team through the campaign. But they got hot at the right time, and that was tough. And I'll tell you, and I'll screw this up a little bit because I always get messed up on the dates. But I think 3 out of the last 5 years, the Bandits have been in the championship, or pretty close to it, and to come away with none, it's definitely leaves a sour taste. But I would tell you too, at the same time, that there's nobody in that locker room or from the executive management that Scott Loeffler and Steve Dietrich and Johnny Tavares and the players and everybody. There's nobody more disappointed in that organization and the people there because they wanted nothing more than to bring a championship, the 5th one, back to Buffalo. One thing I can tell you is that there's a burn in those folks, and they won't stop until they get one, and hopefully multiple ones before at least my career ends. But those guys are very talented from a team perspective, the management, the coaches. And I feel like they're going to get back there, again, real soon, hopefully, and we'll get one back in Buffalo.
I don't think the Bandits lost a lot of players in the offseason. I think maybe Connor Fields, I think. He's now in Rochester, I believe, or Vegas. I'm not sure. But I know
he's in Rochester, so he got drafted by Vegas in the expansion draft, and then he ended up getting traded to Rochester. That was a bummer. I mean, it was tough because they had to expose somebody. And again, I'm not Steve Dietrich, and certainly if Steve was on here, he'd probably be able to give you a lot more of the insight to it. But when you've got the Fraziers and you've got you can only retain so many players, and you've got Dane and Josh Byrne, and you had to expose some talent because that team, especially this year from a Bandit standpoint, had a ton of talent, and you knew you were going to lose somebody.
And I was going to say the regular season's not that far away. I think you open up against Albany on December 3rd at 7:30 at the KeyBank. Is it the KeyBank Center now? They keep changing the name of the arena.
It is the KeyBank Center. Yeah, you're right. I think when we opened it up back in '96, I think it was the Marine Midland Arena, and it's changed a few times, but it's the KeyBank Center. So yeah, it's December 3rd's the opener. I want to say, and don't quote me on this, but I want to say camp starts maybe November 1st or early November. So the team will be right back at it. They didn't really have a long, break between, the final game last year and then starting camp this year. And for a lot of the guys, they play in the PLL. So those guys probably didn't get much of a break at all.
And I actually filmed a game in Six Nations just outside of Brantford for Rogers TV with the Six Nations team against the Peterborough Lakers. And I got to see Doug Jamieson, the goalie for the Albany Firewolves, take on Matt Vince. And there's a number of guys playing in that league. And I'm going to have to say this. I filmed hockey as a camera guy. But lacrosse, man, it's really fast. It's fast, and you really have to pick up that ball too.
Yeah, and you have to actually educate me. So I know Vino played in that Peterborough, and they won the Man Cup.
Yes.
Doc, give me a sense of kind of what that Canadian box lacrosse looks like. Is that different than the games you saw in the NLL? Was it a little tougher game? Maybe was it?
It was my first time ever being down to Six Nations, and I thought the quality of play was outstanding, and it was physical, but it was good. It was really good, and these guys, they love the sport, and that's the thing I like about this sport is these guys, they're very approachable, and they love playing for the game. They're obviously not getting a lot of money like the NHL players or Major League Baseball players or NFL players.
Yeah, there's no doubt that these guys play for the love of the game. And I would say that the dollars that are there today are certainly probably more lucrative when they started. We joked, I think we had kind of a team call a while back to celebrate one of the championships of the Bandits. So we had a lot of the old guard that was there, Jim Veltman and Johnny Tavares and a bunch of others, Troy Cordingley. And we joked, I think at one point I probably made a little bit more than some of the players back in the day, but that certainly changed. I think that, the sport's evolving. And again, I'm not an expert, but I would tell you that, given the fact that the NLL is expanding, the PLL coming in, and there's a lot of excitement around that. So I think a lot of players are finding that, they may have to play lacrosse for a couple of different leagues. They can play year round and they can make a salary doing it, right? They're not going to be able to do it forever, but who wouldn't want to play a sport that you loved and you grew up playing and know that you're making a few bucks at least to pay the bills, right? So that's awesome.
Do the players right now have a players association or a union?
They do. So in the LL, they do for sure. Yeah. So they got a players union.
Okay. My friend Sandra Murray says she's a big fan of the Robinson brothers. Their mother and grandmother is from their hometown in Saginaw, Michigan. So
Okay. Awesome.
I'm not sure. Yeah, so she's one of my biggest supporters on here as well. But yeah, like I said, I'm hooked on the sport now, and I'm hoping to get to some games in Hamilton this year and back to Buffalo as well.
So what's your team? If you had to pick a team, what's your team? Is it Toronto? Is it Buffalo? What is it?
I got to go with the Bandits just because
Attaboy.
John Gerks gave me an
Gertler?
invite. Gertler
Yeah.
gave me an invite, and he took care of me at that game along with Lyra Clements. And I met Bud Bailey, who I ended up having
Yeah.
on my podcast show. So many great stories from Bud Bailey as well.
Yeah. Bud's well versed. He's a guy that's been around a long time, and I think he's written a few books, and he can certainly probably fill a podcast with a bunch of different stories that he's got through the years. Not only for
Yeah,
lacrosse, but for me, he actually worked for the Sabres at one point as well. So I'm sure there's a bunch there. So did John Gertler.
yeah, definitely. And I thought he did a great job as the Sabres announcer, but I guess they
Yeah.
wanted to go with RJ to do both TV and radio. But I thought John was a very good announcer for the Sabres.
Yeah, absolutely. Gertz came in and again, I don't know the details completely on how that happened. I think I was a younger lad at that point, just kind of watching hockey from the transition from Ted Darling, and when then Ted got ill to John. I think John stepped in and really helped the team out at a time when they needed somebody to do play by play, and I think he did a great job. And yeah, I think it was just timing. Right at the end of the day, they had an opportunity to bring RJ in and do simulcasting, and I'm guessing it's the dollars and the business drive a lot of those decisions, and Gertz was kind of the odd man out. But I love Johnny. Johnny's actually the guy that hired me to come on and do Sabres in-stand stuff. I actually had a DJ business, and I was DJing John Tucker's wedding, and John was a former Sabre. He was a Sabre at the time, and I got to know some of the Sabres, and he knew I did weddings, so he hired me to do his. And they had the Sabres brass there, and Gertz was there as one of the guys, and said, "Listen, I like your presentation. Would you ever want to come down to the Sabres and do some on ice stuff?" And I said, "Sure, I'll give it a shot." He said, "Listen, I'll give you tickets. I got some merchandise, got some free seats. I got a parking spot and a little buffet dinner to come down and do it." So I went on and did some in-stand stuff and on ice stuff for him that first year. And they loved it. And, it seemed to click pretty well. The sponsors loved it as well. I think my first time doing it, or at least one of the first times, I did what we call, and I don't know, Chris, if you ever heard of Chevy Scoro. This was an
Yes,
event that was on the ice,
yes.
and what happened was they bring this Chevy truck out, and they pick somebody from the audience, and he's got a chance to come down on the ice, and if he puts a puck through a hole from like the red line, and I think there's like a quarter-inch clearance on each side of the puck. If he puts it in, he wins himself like a new F-150. Well, the first one that I do, or at least one of the first two or second, whatever it was early on. I introduce this guy. We get him out and we tell him what he's got to do, and we let the fans kind of cheer. And this guy gets on the ice, and I hope I'm not breaking any bylaws here, but he was hammered, right? The guys had a few. He had a few, and he was fairly sauced up, and I just thought this guy's got no chance. He could barely stand up on the ice, right? So he banged the puck, and the puck started flopping, and there was just no way this thing was going to go in. And as it crossed the blue line, the puck started to settle a little bit. And then as it got towards the crease, you just saw it settle, and you knew this thing was dead on. He scored. Place erupted, went nuts. This kid won an F-150. He's running all over the ice, falling all over the place, gets into his truck, drives it around the rink. And from there on in, they asked me to kind of stick around and do some more of that stuff. So I enjoyed it. And then the following year, the Bandits were coming into town as the Mill, and they needed somebody to come in and do PA. And they asked if that would be something I'd be interested in doing. And I'll be honest, I never ever thought that 31 years later we'd still be talking about, Bandit lacrosse. I just didn't think it was going to be one of those sports that stuck. And it happened quickly in Buffalo because the team was just so good. And winning championships early in the years, it drew a really, really nice crowd.
And it's a blue-collar sport, and Buffalo, to me, is still a blue-collar city, and I think the city really relates with their lacrosse team, and the same with the hockey and the football team.
Yeah, absolutely. And like I said, I think at the end of the day, no matter what it is, and you see it in sports, right? I think there's always going to be, your fans and the people that love, and then there's going to be those casual fans that certainly want to be part of a winning organization. And the fact that I think maybe our first handful of games, maybe in the Bandit land, it was maybe 8,000 to 10,000 people. If I remember correctly, the odd held somewhere around 16,500. And it was a handful, so it was a nice crowd, right? But because they took off, and back then it was almost like the Broad Street Bully, so there was a lot of fighting, there was melees, there was scoring, there was hard hitting, a ton of action, and that word got around pretty quickly, and before you knew it, the place was selling out. In fact, we used to have to delay games back in the odd days. We couldn't even start the game because there was such a line out the door for people to get walk-up tickets that we had to delay it just so that they got in to see the game, right? So there was times when it was 15, 20 minutes, a half hour delay just for those reasons alone. So it was great. It was probably some of the best years when I think about sports. I also did the Stanley Cup for the Sabres, so I was PA for the one they lost against the Stars. That was certainly a highlight for me. But those years of the Bandit championships, I just never heard the odd shake the way it did, and I never heard that building roar the way it did back then.
What was your location like at the odd for being a public address announcer?
So I was on the ice, or I say the ice, but the floor for the lacrosse. When we did hockey, Milt Ellis was the he's a legend, and from a Sabre PA guy, he's a traditional voice that did he was there forever. He retired, I think, a year after we opened up the new building, the Marine Midland Arena. He retired, but he was the Buffalo goal his worth of the season. He had that really deep traditional voice, and he was just unbelievable. So I was purely blessed to just kind of hang out and be around Milt and kind of compliment him, me doing some in-stand stuff. And my job was more about commercials and kind of doing interaction with the fans, those kinds of things for the Sabres. But yeah, we sat down on the floor, which to me was a great vantage point because I got to see the action, be part of the action, hear the referees, and different from most sports, I had to do it all. So I had the headset on and I was listening to the game day. At that time, there wasn't a ton of game day. We didn't have digital boards, but any kind of direction as far as reads and things that we needed to get done from a business standpoint, they would be telling me in my ear, as well as me trying to listen and follow the game and kind of complement things that way.
I was going to say, so at the First Niagara Center, are you on field level as well, or are you up in the press box?
Yeah, for the KeyBank Center.
Yeah,
for KeyBank, I'm on the field as well. Same
definitely.
thing.
I was going to say, go ahead.
No, please go ahead.
How much do you miss the Buffalo Memorial Auditorium? I was lucky to go there one time for a Red Wing Sabres game in 1992, ironically, and sat up in the orange seats, and I was like, oh my God, I didn't realize how steep the orange seats were at the odd.
Yeah, so I think for me, I miss it that way because the building was so steep that you just felt like the fans were on top of you, and it was so loud, and so close, with the fans being so close to you, it just felt more intimate. But I would tell you too that I love the KeyBank Center, and I'm happy that we made the change because, quite honestly, the odd definitely had saw better days, and that was a breaking down auditorium, and it was nice to get into something brand new. So all things I guess come to an end, and change evolution is is just it's inevitable. But yeah, I miss the days in the yard. And I'll tell you too. Here's the thing: if the Bandits weren't successful and they didn't win the championships that they did there, maybe I wouldn't have such great memories. But certainly that helps, right? The fact that they won those championships there, and I had great memories of Gilbert Perreault and all the memories of closing the building with Pat LaFontaine and everything as well on the Sabres side. So I never went to a Braves game. I wish I would have, but I was a little bit young for that. But yeah, it was a great place. The odd.
I was gonna say I managed to get a bit of a part of a brick when they were demolishing. Well, me and my buddy
Wow,
we managed to get through a fence, and he got himself a big brick from the odd, and
no kidding.
I got a couple pieces of it. So it's like, yeah,
Yeah, that's awesome. I got
yeah,
nothing. I got no chairs. I didn't get. I don't think I got a lick of anything.
wow. I thought maybe since you were working with the team, they would offer you guys something.
No, no, I didn't. I didn't get anything, and I was kind of at the time, at least with the Sabres and then the Bandits. The Bandits, I was actually working for the Mill, which is the major indoor lacrosse league, and then for the Bandits, I was kind of like a subcontractor. So certainly had a great relationship with everybody there. Stan Mikowski, who to this day I still owe a ton to because Stan was amazing, and Stan runs the building today and ran it back then. Matt Rabinowitz was another guy that I worked pretty closely with, and Tommy Hughes. So great time, great memories, and I certainly miss it. And I wish I could get those years back, just because I'm an old man now.
It
Like
goes,
to be young again.
yeah. I just turned 50 in June. It's like, where's the time go?
I remember 50.
Well, yeah, I'm at 50, but I was gonna say, do you remember your first goal call for the Buffalo Bandits? And were you a little bit nervous doing your first game?
Yeah, I don't remember the first call. I couldn't tell you what happened, if it was a bandit score or a visiting score or whatever the deal was. I definitely was nervous, and I would still tell you to even to this day, I probably get a little butterflies, not knowing what to expect. But certainly not the way I did back then. But yeah, I mean, I walked into that environment not really knowing, what to expect, and quite honestly, the only direction that I got from the Mill, and Ed Wada was one of the guys that I dealt with back then in the Mill. He just said, there's really no script to do what you do. Just enjoy it, have fun with it, make it your own. And I did, and me having a background kind of entertaining or getting in front of people from a DJ standpoint, doing weddings, events, parties, MC Jim Kelly Stargaze events, things like that. I just try to look at that event like I would anything else, and just try to find a way to not only do my job but entertain a little bit. So I just took that approach, and it seemed to work out.
And I've had other PA announcers on as well, and they told me just they try to have their own style. And one thing I've learned about the public address announcing, a lot of these guys have done it for like 20, 30, 40, in some cases, like in Philadelphia with Lou Nolan, 50 years with the Flyers, Dan Baker with
Wow.
the Phillies for 50 years. So a lot of guys that are in the public address announcing seem to stay in it long term. They love it.
Yeah, yeah. I would tell you that it was purely accidental. It wasn't something that I didn't go and apply. It wasn't something that I was looking to do. Again, it kind of happened at one of the Sabres weddings and kind of got me in there, and things rolled from there. I do not think that I am your traditional PA guy. I don't think that I've got the pipes that some guys do. Like Milt Ellis had some amazing pipes. I mean, even John Gertler's got an amazing voice. I don't have that. I tend to use a lot of voice inflection, excitement. I just try to be me. But yeah, I mean, I would tell you that there's probably a ton of guys out there that kind of model their career around being a PA guy, and for me, it was more or less this was something cool to do at the time. I had a little experience in getting in front of people and talking, and then I just had to add in some of that professional stuff. That, quite honestly, those are the things that make me more uneasy when I have to do something more structured. When you just let me be and say, you got free reign, go have some fun. That's when I tend to flourish.
Good to know that. I had no idea, but I forgot what I was gonna say. This question I had to ask you, Chris. Do you have any rituals before a Bandits home game that you do every game to get you going?
Yeah, so I wouldn't say I wouldn't say necessarily to get me going, but what I like to do is I get there about 2 hours before the game, and I do like to mingle with the team a little bit. I do like to talk to the coaches, and it's not from an interview perspective, but I just want to get a feel for where the team's at that day, because I know for me, I'm more comfortable and I perform better when when my mind is at ease and I feel if I've got some connection with the players and I got a connection with the coaches and the team, then I feel like I'm a little bit freer to do my job. I don't want to go into it stressed, or I don't want to go into it feeling like I can't do certain things because I might think that the coaches or somebody might not like this or somebody might not like that. So for me, I guess the ritual, Chris, is that I just like to get down there early. I like to spend some time with the team. I get on the floor and I joke around with some of the guys. I try to keep things light. I'll certainly talk to Scott Loeffler and Chugs and John Tavares. Sometimes I think he's a guy that's trying to always stay in that mind frame for the game. So we'll chat a bit, but I can tell that he's got his game face on and he's looking to kind of get some other things. So he's got bigger priorities than talking to me at the moment. But that's probably, I guess, if I had to put some rituals together, those would be the things for me.
And when I was at the Bandits game, John invited me down to the post-game show, I guess, the conference call with John
Yeah,
Tavares and Steve Priola. I think that's his
yeah,
name. Great
yeah.
guy to talk to, and they were so nice to me. Being in my first time ever in a post-game conference, I answered my questions and stuff like that. And Steve's a really good guy from the sound looks from what I saw of him.
Yeah, I'm a little shocked to hear that because usually Priolo's, he's really not probably the nicest guy on the team. I'm not sure many like Scott on the team. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just teasing. Steve's actually a great guy. He's
Yeah.
the team captain. Quite honestly, probably should have been Defensive Player of the Year a number of times throughout his career. Just a great guy, very classy. So yeah, you met one of the classy guys in Steve, and certainly Johnny T, who is the all-time greatest I would say lacrosse player, especially from a Canadian standpoint. But just recently, I got the chance to go up and see him get inducted into the Canadian Sports Hall of Fame, which is a really big deal. So Johnny T, and so very fortunate you got yourself with a couple of good ones there.
Yes, and I had another Hall of Famer on my podcast show too recently. Brian Shanahan, the brother of Brandon Shanahan.
Yeah, and his son Devlin plays for the Bandits, so he's a goaltender, one of the backup guys. And Shanny's a great guy. I think he does color or play-by-play for The Rock, doesn't he? Or does something for TSN. I'm not sure if
Uh,
it's exclusively for The Rock or if he's part of the network up there that just does games. But Shanny's a great guy.
Absolutely. And I was going to say, how important is it for the league to have now a game of the week on TSN and I believe on ESPN now, more exposure for the league, Chris?
Oh, I think it's awesome, and I forget the streaming service that they had prior to ESPN, but it was tough to get the games on. It seemed like we had a lot of issues, but now that we're on ESPN Plus and TSN, of course, I don't get TSN here in the States, but I think that is just outstanding because now you're starting to spread the game a little bit, right? So, you know, other folks are now have the opportunity through, especially in the States. Because I think from a Canadian standpoint, Chris, maybe you can tell me. I think that from a Canada standpoint, lacrosse being a national game, I think you guys from a box standpoint, you already get the game, you understand it, but it's trying to spread the game through the U.S. and having it on ESPN Plus, I think is a big deal.
And one thing I like about the Bandits, their games are on the radio. So I've been able to listen to John on WGR 550. And what's the other
Yeah.
station? The Bet 1520, I think.
Yeah, it used to be KB radio. I don't know. I'm not sure what the call letters are now, but yeah, you're probably right.
And he does such a great job on radio and television.
Gertz is hilarious, man. I love Gertz. We drove up together. We roomed together in Colorado when they lost the second game. We drove up to see JT get inducted in the Hall of Fame, and this guy just he is so funny and he is always on, and the guy just out of nowhere just comes up with little quips and things that just he's a great guy.
Absolutely, and I really appreciate the opportunity to come down to cover the Bandits, and I'm hoping to be able to do that again this year. Write an article about the Bandits and cover the Bandits. I really enjoy the atmosphere down at the KeyBank Center.
Yeah, it's a ton of fun, and over my 30 years or so that with doing the league, I've had a chance to talk to players that have come on to the Bandits and have played for other teams, or even players that have played for other teams that I get a chance to talk to, whether it's at an All-Star game, an event, or just because I've been doing the games for so long. And I think that a lot of them will tell you, if they're being honest, that Buffalo is one of the hot spots when it comes to playing. They enjoy the fact that the crowd gets into it. They enjoy the fact that the game day presentation's so good. They love the fact that overall, the experience in Bandit Land seems to be, top notch, above and beyond others, or at least one of the top premier places to be and to play. So, David Brock's coming back this year. And him and I talked at a recent golf event, and he's just so happy to be back because he loves the fandom. He loves the place. He loves the fact that, Bandit Land, for the most part, we draw a good crowd. And that's good for the players, right? They like to play in front of a larger crowd. And when you've got the game day presentation and you've got everything going, it's just a fun atmosphere.
Yeah, and I was reading up the Bandits led the NLL in attendance in 2022 at 9,053 per game. How hard was it for that pandemic to shut down the league? And did it originally take a while for the Bandit fans to come back to the arena?
Yeah, I would say we're still not where we need to be, right? So and I don't have the figures in front of me, but I would say that, in its heyday, obviously we sold out. But, over the last, I'd say prior to the pandemic, we were probably averaging, I don't know, 12 to 14, 15,000 a year. And with the pandemic hitting, certainly that hurt. And then coming back last year, I think there was still a lot of people that were skeptical about coming back, and for a lot of reasons. One, just not sure of masks, no masks, shots, no shots. So there was probably some confusion there. But to have 9,000, I think for us, I would say that's low. But given the conditions and kind of where we are, it was nice to have that size of a crowd, and that's an average, right? Some days we had those 13, 14, and then some days we had 7 or 8, which wasn't awesome, but it's good to see the fans come back. And going on a championship run doesn't hurt, because that certainly helped us, and we filled the building at the end of the year with that. And I'm kind of hoping that works itself into this year, so that we fill the building. Because to me, when that building's full, it's just a great place to be.
Gotta ask you this, Chris. The finals is the best of three. Do you think there'll be a possibility they can make it one day a best of 5, or do you think best of 3 is the best, is probably the best for the league?
Well, I mean, considering, I think it used to be a one game, right?
Okay.
And I think it was played back in the day in the mill anyway. It was played at the place that had the highest attendance, which made sense because you had two owners and they wanted to get the biggest, gate they could. I think the fact that it's best of 3, at least for now, I think that's making some pretty great strides compared to where it used to be. It's a good question. I think today, and again, not an expert, so I apologize to anybody out there, but what I would say is that because the season tends to get into June, which also conflicts with the PLL, I'm not sure they're going to want to expand it any further. And they certainly don't want to reduce games. And we're already starting December 3rd. So that's a tough question, Chris. I don't know. I think right now 3 seems like a good number. But, for me personally, I'd love to see it best of 5 just because there'd be more games for the fans.
And absolutely, and I like the setup. The first round is what, one game winner take all, and then it's a best of 3. And then, like I said, the Albany series, you won that 1-0. The Toronto series was great. I think you guys won with a goal post, and
Yeah.
The 2 games went with the Rock right down to the final second.
Yeah, Toronto's tough. I mean, I would just say I think of all the teams that I think about in the division, Toronto has always been traditionally the toughest one, and for whatever reason, and I don't know if the teams don't like each other or whatever, but that rivalry is certainly a strong one, and it's a fun one, and it's probably the one that I get up for most. just because it is always a tight one. Toronto always has a good team. The Bandits are, traditionally always a good team. Over the years, Rochester and Buffalo have had some great battles as well. Certainly with them moving, to Halifax, that's changed a bit. Even though that rivalry's still there, you just don't feel like it's the same Buffalo-Rochester rivalry. And then with the Pagulas own the Rochester team today, I think that rivalry is starting to generate a little bit. But overall, I think Toronto and Buffalo's the biggest. And Toronto's just a team. I mean, I don't know. They're a very confident team. They're well coached. They got great players, and they come in and they don't seem to be be intimidated by what we do here in Bandit Land. So that's always a tough one too. So, but yeah, Toronto's tough.
And I'm going to admit this. I said to Pat Gregor, I said moving them to Hamilton and calling them the Toronto Rock was a mistake. But you know what? They've done well in Hamilton, which is only what I live in Guelph, which is about 40 minutes from Hamilton. Much easier to get to a game in Hamilton than in Toronto downtown at the Scotiabank Arena. And I think Hamilton's taking on to the game of lacrosse again. And they had a team before as well.
They did. Yep, they did. Yeah, that's a good point, Chris. And I would say that, I don't know all the reasons and why they moved. It could be financial, and it could have been. I think what I heard was it was certainly tough to get the right or the best dates because Toronto was the main tenant, the Maple Leafs, and then you had the Raptors. So I think the Rock were getting some really tough dates, so that was really kind of hard for them to not only pay the day's mortgage but also make money. I think you're right. I think Hamilton's a great city. I think that also almost increases the rivalry a little bit more. The name, when you're in Hamilton and you're calling it the Toronto Rock, I guess it's more of a metro thing. And you kind of see that today with Buffalo, like the Buffalo Bills, they're actually, they're in Buffalo, so that makes sense. But they hold camp in Rochester. They're certainly having outreach to Mississauga, Ontario, as well as, Syracuse, Rochester. So maybe that's just part of their branding is that they want to stay Toronto because they want to be able to draw from not only Hamilton, but also from the Toronto, Mississauga area.
Absolutely. Hey, Chris, are you okay for a few more minutes? A couple more
Sure.
questions?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
I'm going to put you on the spot here. Obviously, the Bandits have won 4 championships. Which one was the most special? 92, 93 being back-to-back, or 96 or 2008? Which one was most special to you?
Wow, that's a good one. I love them all because I'm a competitive cat and I like to win. So to me, they're all special. Now, if I pick one out, 2008 to me, if I had to give the edge to one, only because the other ones were so new and fresh, I loved them. But 2008, it was a big gap, I think, between 1996 and 2008. The Bandits won one, and I don't have the numbers in front of me, but I want to say that we were there a few more times in between, and we weren't able to capture and win the championship. So to finally break through it again in 2008 and get another one with in the new building, that to me was something special. To have my family there at the time, my son and my daughter were really young, 4 and 5, I think, respectively. So I think overall, just to be able to do that, with Darius kind of leading the team at that point, to win that championship, to me was, I guess, a tad bit. And I'm only going to say a tad because, Chris, I loved them all. I really did. Each one of them for different reasons, and they were all very exciting. But 2008, probably just because of the gap between championships.
One thing I've noticed too, when I went to a Bandits game against the Rock this year, the Sabres, not the Sabres, but the Bills came in support. It seems like the teams in Buffalo like to support the other teams, which I think is great.
Yeah, and I think, a lot of that has to do with the fact that the Pagulas own it all, right? So they own the Bills, they own the Sabres, they own the Bandits, they own the Nighthawks, probably a few more things that I'm missing off on. But the one thing that you do see that one Buffalo message. And they've kind of created that brand. And quite honestly, you see guys like Dane Smith and Josh Byrne and Ian McKay and Chris Cloutier. These guys are arm in arm with the Josh Allens of the world and, the Skinners of the world. And, the coaches are talking between the McDermotts, and the Sabres brass. And these guys get an opportunity to go and support the community, and they do it together, which is really, really special. And and from there, you'll get some Bills players at our events and vice versa, and we get a chance to, partake in some Bills games and Sabre games as well. And it's a really big deal, and it certainly does bring. It makes I think the Bagulas have done a really nice job of making the Bandits feel, like a first class pro team in that way. But yeah, you're dead on.
And even the Buffalo Bandits, who I have a relationship with, Pat Malacaro, he helped me out this summer by inviting me down there, and they had a Bandits promotion there this summer as well, and I think that's great.
Yeah, that was actually a lot of fun. So I go to quite a few Bison games throughout the year, and they asked me to come down and do PA for that game. I wasn't able to do PA because I already had tickets to bring the family down, but I did get a chance to go in the booth and do a couple of calls and stuff like that. And we had a ton of Bandit fans there. We did a couple of Bandit chants and had some fun with it. So I hope they do it again next year, because I thought they did the themes with the Sabres, the Bills, and the Bandits, and I thought all three did really, really well, and it was a ton of fun.
And one thing, I've noticed, like, Buffalo is like one of my second homes when I'm in the States. I can see why a lot of athletes, current and former athletes, like to live in the area. It's a really nice area.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, no, there's no doubt. And I think when you finally come to Buffalo, when you get past the fact that people think it snows, every day of the year here, which it doesn't. I think right today, I think it's like 75 degrees. It's just gorgeous out. Um, the tough part is the snow and the weather, but you get that for that 4 or 5 months, but then the rest of the year is awesome. But even in the winter sports, for a lot of people, they love it. But yeah, you guys, you got guys like Lindy Ruff, I think, still holds the house here. Scotty Bowman, a lot of the Bills players, that are ex Jim Kelly, et cetera. So and a lot of the Bandits have residents here, So I think Dane and Josh, each have a house here, and Ian, and so yeah, it's a pretty cool place to be, and I think for a lot of them, it's the fact that it's a fairly tight knit community. You can get to anywhere. I always say this: you can get to anywhere in Buffalo in 20 to 30 minutes. So yeah, you're dead on, Chris. It's a cool place to be.
And I was going to say, and a lot of the media have been really supportive with my podcast, like Gertz and John Murphy and Sal Capaccio's come on my show twice, yourself, Pat Malacaro, Brian Koziel. They've all taken me in and been very supportive of what I'm trying to do in switching careers into radio at 50. And if I'm lucky enough to make it in radio and I can work in an American market, I definitely would love to work in Buffalo.
That's awesome, man. Good for you. Well, congrats on that. That's awesome.
And I do camera work as well, so I'm doing the TV side along with the radio side of it as well.
Wow, that's awesome. So and when you say TV, so are you doing what sports?
I do camera work for Rogers TV, which is a big cable company out of Toronto. I do the Ontario Hockey League Squall Storm, which is the feeder league for the NHL. And John Tucker, who you mentioned earlier, played for the Kitchener Rangers. And your goalie, Craig Anderson, played in Guelph 20 plus years ago.
Nice. Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, so it's great. I get to see these guys in the Ontario Hockey League before some of them make it to the AHL and the NHL. But hockey is probably the hardest sport to do camera work. Hockey and lacrosse, because of the speed of it.
Right. No, I'm dead on it. And depends on where you are, right? So if you're got a handheld or you're down by the ice, that makes it even harder. But if you're up on one of the platforms, it's a bit easier. But yeah, and believe me, I'm not. So I got a family full of photographers, videographers. My dad worked for 40 years at Channel 7 WKBW here, and then my brother Scott, he works actually for Channel 4, and he's been there for 25 years. And he actually covers the Bills, and he does sports for WIVB.
I was going to say, I love doing the handheld camera and being in the corner of the action and stuff like that. And I'm hoping next year to do some more lacrosse games as well.
That's awesome, man. Well, it sounds to me like you're doing great, man. You got yourself your own podcast. I mean, you listed all these different things. I had no idea what it was, but good for you.
Thank you. Hey, before we wrap this up, just a couple quick questions. I was going to ask you, who have been some of your favorite Buffalo Bandit players over the years? Obviously, Johnny Tavares, and some of your most memorable goal calls, if you have some. I didn't say favorite. I used the word more memorable.
Yeah, well, let me see. Bandit wise, it's probably a lot of the guys that you probably would think. So it's the Kilgore brothers, Darius and Richie. I think back to the accordingly. So I got Troy Cordingly, Teddy Cordingly, who's actually our equipment guy. I've known Teddy for a long time, and he's awesome. He's not a player, but he goes along from accordingly standpoint. There's a ton of guys. Mark Stainhouse is a guy that stands out. Really, really good to my family, good to my kids. He's actually been to my house. He came here for my son's birthday party one year and just stuck around forever. Drove all the way from, and I'm not even sure where he's from, Ontario or somewhere up there in Canada. But he's a great guy. Billy D. Smith, another one. Then you got Jugger. You've got you've got Cosmo. And today's day, I mean, Dane Smith's a great guy. I know I'm going to miss some folks. I love it. Ian McKay's, great guy. But honestly, they've all touched me to a degree, and each of them have even guys like Pat Madalena, believe it or not. There's a guy that you probably never even know or name, but Pat's a great guy, and Pat and I've talked quite a bit over the years when he played for the Bandits, and just a class guy, right? So. It's hard for me to pinpoint one or two, being 30 plus years in the business. But I bump into guys all the time, whether it's at alumni events or whatever, and instantly brings back great memories. As far as goals go, I'm going to screw this up. So I can only remember winning the game in overtime here in Buffalo. I think we were down, and I hope I don't mess this up. I'll probably remember it very vividly later, but right now I don't. But there's none that come to mind other than in those first years. And I want to say it was Kevin Alexander that won a face-off, and the Bandits had to go down. They tied the game up. He won another face-off. They went down and won it. So I don't have the the complete details, but that's what sticks in my mind over the years is probably some of the bigger, more fun goals.
Okay, and I was gonna say this one I had to ask you. Who are some of the excuse me, sorry. Who are some of the other great NL players you've seen over the years come through Buffalo, and some of the most trickiest player names to pronounce?
Oh boy. Well, I mean, I've seen them all, So I mean, the Gate brothers, certainly the Powell, John Grant Jr. I mean, all these guys, right? Dawson's, when you think about probably the best lacrosse players to play in this league, or, what I'd say box lacrosse. I mean, I've seen them all kind of come through here. So those are the names that I think that stand out. Sean Evans, to me, is another big one. There's a lot of guys, the Billy D's, even the current Steve Priolos, people like that, Matt Vince. So, Johnny T, of course, all these guys that played. So to me, there's just huge names there, right? When you think about lacrosse, and some say the Gates were the best. Some say John Grant Jr. Some say Dan Dawson. I'm always for my money. I'm picking JT number one all the time and every time, and that's not just because I'm a homer for Buffalo. It's just I think Johnny brings. Johnny's always been somebody who could not only finish and score, but he brought a lot of heart, and he brought. I wouldn't say a lot of vocal leadership, but he just brought a lot of, leadership through his play. And he's just a guy to me that's just he is, and this is always oversaid, but he's the Wayne Gretzky of lacrosse. And I'm sorry, what was the second part of your question?
That's just give me 1 second. I guess some of the okay, the second part of the question, I forgot that. Some of the most trickiest player names to pronounce, because I know with doing podcast shows and public address announcer, you want to try to get people's names right.
I definitely do. What I would tell you is I can't think of anybody off the top of my head that I struggled with. One thing that I do as part of a ritual, I guess, for me is not only do I look at a pronunciation guide if they have one, and they don't always have one for NLL, but I have a decent enough relationship with the players and coaches where either I'll go talk to a player or I may even go talk to a coach and get the right pronunciation, because that's important to me. But the Bandits have had Minnie Chiello is another one that when I first saw it was kind of an odd one, right? But Chris, that's a good question. I can't think of anybody today that sticks out to me, that stumped me, because I like to pride myself on trying to get it right by talking to the player or the coach. And then, if you ask me about the Sabres, there was quite a few through the years because there was a lot of Russian names, Czechoslovakian names, things like that I'd be like, holy cannoli. That those could be somewhat of a challenge, and you just pray that they don't either get a point or get a penalty, and you don't ever have to say. But any event, yeah. For the NLL, I thought, I think nothing sticks out as far as a complicated name.
Okay, I know with the NHL, there's a website for all the public address announcers. I believe the gentlemen from either the Penguins or the Kings have created a website where they pronounce all the players' names, and I guess each PA announcer does it for their teams to make it easier for the other guys to pronounce names correctly.
Yeah, I've never seen that site, but that's a great idea.
If I can remember what the site is, I will send you the link to it. But Mike Ross from the Maple Leafs told me about that site. It's for the NHL guys. Yeah, he's another good guy, by the way. Does a great job with the Maple Leafs.
Well, I'll tell you this: like a lot of people say Tavares, right? So they'll call JT, John Tavares. And there was a time, so when his nephew that plays for the Leafs, that played for at the time it was the Islanders, and I got to meet JT, John Tavares, the hockey player. But at one point, a lot of these announcers were calling him John Tavares. And I went up to JT maybe 4 or 5 years ago, and I said, bro, I feel so bad. I said, I've been calling you Tavares this whole time. He goes, Chris, you're the only one. He goes, you're one of a few that actually says it's right. That's the way you say it. It's not Tavares, it's Tavares. So you'd find that even people that probably to this day, would think that, it's pronounced one way. Until you talk to the individual or do you get it from somebody that actually, is close to that individual, sometimes I'm not even convinced that some of these pronunciations through somebody else, a third party, is even accurate.
Absolutely. And I just got to ask you this question before we wrap it up. What are you looking forward? What are you looking forward to the most about the 2023 Bandits? And quick thoughts on the Las Vegas Desert Dogs as the 15th franchise in the National Lacrosse League.
Yeah, so I'm looking forward. I want to see us kind of continue the way we did last year. I mean, I've told many people that, I am not your traditional PA guy in the sense that I look at this as kind of a career. I do it for the money. I do it, I don't do it for the notoriety. I don't do it for, any of that stuff. I do it because I'm a competitive guy, that played some sports young, high school and, played rugby in college. And this is another way for me to further my competitiveness in a way. I like to be, part of an organization, part of a team. I like that compete level. So for me, it's all about competing. I'm not saying winning, but it's competing. And so I'm hoping that we can continue that. And with JT and Chugger and Scott Lawford and others kind of at the helm, I feel like we'll always have that tradition of winning. So I'm looking forward to what the season's going to bring, given last year and kind of where we improve. And then I'm sorry, what was the second part of the question?
Thoughts on the Las Vegas Desert Dogs as the 15th franchise in the National Lacrosse League, and can you see a team in Seattle at some point too as another team in the West?
Yeah, I think it would be good to add another team in the West because I think there's definitely an imbalance. But I love having one in Vegas. Joey Tsai and Sean Williams leading that organization. Sean is one of the classiest guys you'll ever meet. There's another guy that is a former Bandit that I should have listed as somebody that I really enjoy because Sean's just a great guy and a very classy guy. So yeah, I think that's awesome. I hope to get to a game. I'd love to go see them play, in Vegas. I think that's going to be exciting. So it's going to be interesting to see what they do with that team and how they publicize it. What kind of game day, given the fact that they put a lot of energy into the hockey team there, the Golden Knights. It's going to be interesting to see what that team looks like. I think certainly they're going to struggle this year a little bit. Every new team typically does, although it seems like a lot of the expansion teams, were able to pick up such great talent that they were actually very competitive out of the gate. But it's hard to think that an expansion team is going to, win it. But I think Sean and that team, a lot of respect for what Sean's going to do and what he's doing with that group.
And I believe Steve Nash and Wayne Gretzky are part owners in this team.
Yeah, and Dustin Johnson, I guess, is the part of that too. So I think it's I don't know to what degree, but I think Joey Sa, who owns the San Diego team, has probably got most of it. But yes, Gretzky's got his name attached to it. Steve Nash, and then Dustin Johnson.
Definitely. And the final question for you, Chris. Any advice for those who are watching or listening to this podcast later on, looking to pursue a career in professional sports broadcasting? And where can my audience find you or follow you on social media? And just quick thoughts on the Buffalo Bills and Buffalo Sabres starts right now to the season.
Yeah, so I guess my advice would be, I mean, I'm not on the broadcast side, so I mean, I'm a PA guy. I mean, if you, I think Chris, kind of what you're doing today. I mean, you got to be dedicated to the craft. If this is something you want to do, I would say, work your way, try to get within a team, intern with a team. Sports is tough. It's not easy, and there's not a ton of, I mean, when you think about sports, there's 30 to 31 in hockey and football. There's not a ton of different jobs out there. So get yourself in an organization, show your value. Someone like yourself who seems like, you want to be on the media side. I think you're doing all the right things, right? You're doing a lot of the things with some of these, with some of these different teams. You're diversifying. You're not only just doing camera work, but you're doing some on-air things as well as, from a technical standpoint, you feel, you look fairly savvy and you're working through social media. So get yourself out in social media, get yourself part of an organization and work real hard and make sure that, you start to brand yourself and kind of declare where you want to be and what you want to do. As far as the Bills and the Sabres, love it, right? So, I mean, longtime Buffalo Bills, Sabres fan, part of the Sabres organization for a while. I love the fact that and what they're doing with the team. And of course, the Bills, right now, I certainly, I know everybody's saying, it's Super Bowl. I don't know. I would just tell you that I love the fact that we're competitive every week. I love the fact that we're entertaining. I love the fact that, people are talking about the Buffalo Bills and they're talking about the Buffalo Sabres again. There's some energy around the teams. It's bringing energy around the city of Buffalo. I think people's spirits are up. When you think about mental health, nothing helps in my mind, you know, uh, nothing helps to complement mental health better than when you're a fan of some of sports teams and you've got some winning teams. I'm also a Yankee fan, so of course I'm a little bit depressed about that. Had a tough year, but you're really excited about what the Pagulas are doing and what Buffalo sports is doing.
It's going to be say it's a good time to be a Buffalo sports fan right now with the Bills, Sabres, Bandits, and even the Buffalo Bisons had a very good year as
Yes,
well.
yes, absolutely. Yeah, definitely a good time to be to be in Buffalo.
Definitely, and definitely going to have to come down to a Sabres game too, and Sabres and Bandits game this year at the KeyBank Center for sure.
Do it.
And
Let me know.
hopefully I'll be able to run into you at the Bandits game as well.
Well, hopefully you do, and then when you do, make sure you say hi. Love to meet you in person.
Definitely, and I was going to say, and where can my audience quickly find you on social media?
I think
Where's the best place?
the only thing I do is Twitter.
Okay.
And then so I think it's what is it? I don't even know what my Twitter.
Oops. I got it there. I put it on the graphics for you.
What is it? I can't see it.
Okay, it's at Swin
Swentech.
S Swintech. Yeah, at
Yeah. Okay.
Swintech
There.
on Twitter. Yeah,
There you go.
definitely.
That's Swentech.
Definitely. But hey, I was going to say, Chris, I'm sorry I kept you more than 45 minutes, but
No, happy to do it.
I really enjoyed talking to you about your career as a public address announcer for the Bandits and looking forward to the 2023 season, which will be starting up. I think your home opener again is on December 3rd at 7:30 against the Albany Firewolves at the KeyBank Center.
You got it, man. Listen, I appreciate the time. Thanks for having me on. Excited to see you grow your career. Anytime. Love to see you in Bandit Land. Love to see any of the listeners that want to come down and just get a full experience on the NLL side. I would tell you that you'll see that on the Bandit Land side. It's everything's about fun. You've got a lot of different characters dressed up. You've got people painting their faces. You've got orange and black and purple and all the different colors, and it's just a great place to be. And we try to have some fun, to kind of complement the game on the field.
And I'm gonna have to get a Buffalo Bandits hat as well. I think you guys have one of the best logos in all of the NLL.
I agree. I love our colors. Love our logo. I think it's unbeatable.
They don't need to change it. I hope they don't end up doing what the Sabres did.
I'll leave it at that.
Okay, the Sabres have gone back to what they should be like. I'm so happy about the Sabres uniforms.
I love the blue and gold. I'm not a goat head fan, and that's only because I grew up, I'm 59. I grew up with the blue and gold. So I'm a traditionalist in a lot of ways. But I also understand there's a lot of fans out there that grew up during the Briere days and the Hashtag days and all those. And I did the Sabres at those times, and those were the goat heads, right? As long as they don't bring the slug back, I'm good to go.
Hopefully they don't, but who knows nowadays in sports stuff.
Right.
Retro seems to be coming back. But again, Chris, I want to say thank you so much for coming on season 4, episode 44 of Live with CDP Sports Talk. And we'll definitely keep in touch with you on Twitter. And yeah, definitely look forward to coming down to a Bandits game this year in Buffalo.
Thanks, Chris. Appreciate it.
Thanks a lot. Have a great day, Chris.
You too. Bye-bye.
You too. Thank you. All right, guys. I hope you enjoyed my podcast today with Chris Swenson, the longtime public address announcer for the Buffalo Bandits since their inception of 1992. Guys, just bear with me. I'm going to just play a little clip of Chris. This is a little bit of a clip from YouTube about his career with the Bandits. It's a little bit older, but I thought it was a good clip to play. Just bear with me.
This sport, more than most, from a PA standpoint, lends you to be part of the game, and you get that instant gratification from reaching out and listening to the fans react to each and everything that you do. Let's go, Bandits! Come on, guys. And in some cases, they follow the things that you're doing.
He's been a fixture here for 17 years, and I just can't imagine the games without him.
He has a lot to do with how we play at home and our home field advantage. I really think he's the best announcer in the league.
Johnny! Oh! It's all time!
He's an amazing announcer. He gets the crowd going, keeps them in it. The one game without him was, you miss the guy. He's an awesome announcer.
Bandits coming on the offense. Here's McGreedy.
Sweaty's part of the heart of the Bandits. Without Sweaty, it's not the same. The one game that he missed this year, we did well, and Bull did a good job filling in, but it just wasn't the same without him. So,
well, I was totally honored to fill in for Swenty. I mean, he's a guy that hasn't missed a game in 17 years, and I was scared to death when they told me. I was scared for an entire week leading up to the game because I know I had so big shoes to fill.
For me and Johnny were waiting to get announced, and he just looked at me, and we were both like, that ain't Swenson. And like you said, for 17 years, he's been there every single game, and I definitely noticed. But, I heard he won a trip or something, and I think he would have gotten too much trouble with a wife if he turned that down. So, man's got to do what a man's got to do.
It was hard for me as well because it was the first game that I've ever missed being a Buffalo Bandit announcer.
He's been very creative from the beginning. Everybody's always wanted to be introduced by Chris and to get a nickname from Chris.
Corey! Bomb! Bomb! Bombberry!
It comes natural, in most cases. You try to play off the player's name. You try to think of things that you think are going to work or they're going to create some fan reaction. In some cases, you might get a suggestion from a fan.
Whose house?
Let's go, Bandits!
Bomb, 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 Mary. Let's go, Bandits!
Johnny, who?
Defense. Let's go, Bandits. What you got? Johnny! Johnny Torrance.
It's pretty cool. These are pretty rabid fans, and deep down, kind of a rabid guy, so I dig that.
He has fun, and I think that shows in the crowd. And like I said, so many people come down for a game from Rochester, Toronto, wherever, and they're just like, "Oh, that is the best place ever to watch an NLL game." And I think Swenny's a big part of it.
He's a big part of our team. He gets the fans right in the game, and we play in a lot of different arenas throughout these years. And he's by far the best announcer.
Oh, Corey Poppers!
A Kersey!
Oh, that counts! Oh, how about that?
I want to win, man. I want a championship. I want to hang more banners up in the ceiling. So I'll do whatever I can to help them get there.
Oh, Buffalo! Buffalo what?
Anyways, guys, that was just a clip of Chris's work over the years with the Buffalo Bandits. Again, I want to say thanks to Chris Swenson for coming on today. 30-year career with the Buffalo Bandits. And guys, you can check him out at SwinTac on Twitter, at SwinTac if you want to follow him on Twitter. And also, guys, you can check out the Buffalo Bandits website at bandits.com for further information about the team and their new 2022-23 schedule as well. And being a new fan of the National Lacrosse League, I would highly recommend going to a game this year and either Hamilton with the Toronto Rock or go down to Buffalo to see the Bandits. It's a lot of fun and it's fast paced. It's like a combination of hockey and basketball, and it's a physical sport too. And Chris does a really good job as their public address announcer. So please check out their website again, bandits.com, for ticket information and their schedule of the 2022-23 season. I can put that on here right now, guys. Just give me 1 second. The Bandits open up their 2022-2023 season against Albany on December 3rd, I believe. December 3rd at 7:30, and then they take on Toronto. Yeah, so there's their schedule versus Albany, at Toronto, home to Halifax, at Georgia versus Georgia, Rochester at Philadelphia, New York, Rochester. It's a really good schedule. It's not a long schedule, but like I said, they only play 18 games. 18 regular season games, so 9 at the KeyBank Center and 9 on the road. But their home opener again, guys. Pardon me, guys. I'm battling a cold right now. Is against the Albany Firewolves on December 3rd at 7:30. And I'm hoping to be able to go to that game as well. So check out the bandits.com website or go on, and you can check out their schedule on here as well. And before I wrap this up, guys, I wanted to let you guys know. Hopefully, I'll be better by tomorrow. The Argo Bounce live audio show on Twitter Spaces is every Tuesday night. Tomorrow it's going to be at 7:00. So the Argo Bounce Twitter Spaces show, 7:00 tomorrow night with Nick Small, as we break down the Argonauts' previous game against the Alouettes. They won 24-23 on a Rouge, and preview their upcoming game versus Montreal this Saturday at 2:00 at BMO Field. The Argonauts are hosting the East Final at BMO Field on Sunday, November 13th at 1:00. You can get your tickets from argonauts.ca, and yours truly will be at that game in Toronto on November 13th. They'll play the winner of either Hamilton or Montreal in the East Final. But yeah, hopefully you guys can turn into the Argo Bounce live audio show on Twitter Spaces tomorrow night at 7:00 with Nick Small, as we break down the Argos 24-23 win against the Alouettes and preview their last regular season game of the year against Montreal again this Saturday at 2:00 at BMO Field. The game will be on TSN as well. And guys, just to let you know, next live with CDP Sports Talk, sponsored by Barry Cullen Chevrolet, to be announced. I'm just under the weather this week, so I'm going to see if I can get another guest on this week. If not, it'll probably be next week as well. But again, I want to say thank you to Barry Cullen Chevrolet dealership, 905 Woodlawn Road West in the Guelph Auto Mall, for sponsoring this podcast show. You can check out their website, barrycullen.com, for their newest selection of GM vehicles and pre-owned GM vehicles. And also you can give them a call at 519-824-0210. And again, the all-electric Silverado is now available for pre-order through Barry Cullen as well. So give them a call again at the number 519-824-0210, or check out their website as well. And again, I want to say thank you so much to Chris Swenson, the longtime public address announcer for the Buffalo Bandits, for coming on live with CDP Sports Talk. Again, sponsored by Barry Cullen Chevrolet here in Guelph. And my next podcast show, I will announce on my social media page. I'm under the weather right now, so I'm hoping to get one more podcast in this week. So as soon as I can confirm a guest, I will let you guys know. But check out my Argo Bounce live audio show with Nick Small tomorrow night, 7 o'clock on Twitter Spaces, at Chris D. Palme on Twitter as well. And speaking of that, guys, you guys can also follow me on TikTok. Just one second. I'm going to put that up on here. You can follow me on TikTok at Live with CDP on TikTok as well. I post a lot of content there. And also, guys, you can follow me on my website, beacons.ai/Chris D. Palme. That's beacons.ai/Chris D. Palme. All my digital content and websites and social media sites are on there as well. So anyways, guys, that's it for season 4, episode 44. And this is my 209th episode. Again, thank you to Chris Swenson, the longtime PA announcer for the Buffalo Bandits of the National Lacrosse League, for coming on today. And I want to say thank you to everybody watching this live on YouTube, Facebook, and on Twitter. And this reminds me, just before we go, I do this with all my shows. Live with CDP podcast, the audio version is downloaded onto Google Podcasts, Anchor FM, Apple Podcasts, Breaker, Pocket Casts, Radio Public, Spotify, Castbox, and LinkedIn as well. And give me about 15 minutes, guys, and I'll have the audio version of this episode with Chris Swenson downloaded to my audio platforms. But again, thank you to Chris Swenson for coming on and talking about his career with the Buffalo Bandits. And look forward to attending some National Lacrosse games, National League Lacrosse leagues, National Lacrosse League games in Hamilton and Buffalo this year as well. So hopefully in the next podcast show, I will be feeling a lot better than I am today. But again, I just want to say thank you to everybody for watching this and listening to it on my audio platform. So I hope everybody has a great afternoon, and we'll see you guys tomorrow night at 7 o'clock on my Twitter page for Twitter Spaces, Argo Bounce live audio show with Nick Small at 7 o'clock as we talk about the Argos 24-23 win over the Alouettes, clinching the Eastern Division, and facing Montreal again this Saturday at 2 o'clock at BMO Field. Have a great afternoon, everybody, and we'll talk to you soon. And again, thank you, everyone, for watching and listening to Live with CDP Sports Talk, brought to you by Barry Cullen Chevrolet Dealership, 905 Woodlawn Road West in the Guelph Auto Mall. Check out their website, barrycullen.com, or give them a call at 519-824-0210. Take care, everybody, and thanks again.